And now I'd love to introduce my dear friend Nico. Come on in.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Uh, Afternoon, everyone. Nico, alcoholic. Also known to do a lot of dry goods as well. So if that bothers you, luckily it's an open meeting, and what are you gonna do? It's not about the substance, is it? Um, Now, I haven't done a share this long, and those that know me know how shy and retiring I am. So I don't know if I'll be able to fill it out, but I'll give it a good go. Um, What a lovely bunch of people. Now, there's a lot of people from the South and stuff, right? So I'll speak slowly. Um, I'm going to actually, I tell you what I'll do. Hold on, let me close this, Jay. There we go. Okay, got the housekeeping out the way. All right, let's just start at the beginning, shall we? That's how we do it. I was born, I'm from England. You might caught that bit, but I was born in London to a family that I'm the youngest of three kids, a brother and sister. Um, you know, the early years were interesting. I remember that we're a typical English family in the sense that feelings and emotions are not particularly uh, prevalent. We were fortunate, I suppose, with a privileged background, so I was pretty much brought up by staff. Um, and, this will all become apparent later when we talk about sort of what happened and what it's like. But, as the youngest of, my brother's very successful and he was always sort of smart. He's older by about, I think he's 6 or 7 years older. And my sister's about 5 or 6 years older. And so that gap between siblings is it's quite huge when you're that young. So we were not a close-knit family. We also, um, I do remember things like at my first sort of suicidal ideation, which was designed in my head to be like, well, this will show them, then they'll see me. Because even at a young age, there was that thing of like, I just don't, why am I here? I don't fit into this lot. They all seem to know what they're doing. And, the age difference, I felt that sort of isolation quite early on. And, you know, uh, the flip side of that is a couple of the people that brought me up were I considered more family than family. Um, but then there's a wonderful thing we do in England when you've got a kid that age. They cart you off to boarding school at about age 6, 7, somewhere like that. And if you ever want to feel as though you don't fit in and maybe oh, nobody cares, but and I say it in that way because as an alcoholic, I'm the victim, right? I've always been that victim. I was the victim. They didn't understand. The school didn't understand. My parents didn't understand me, but um, I found ways to compensate. I often say my first two addictions, the first one was attention because there's that thing about, well, if I can't be seen, I'm going to make sure they see me, by just being that sort of disruption, uh, class clown, whatever you want to call it. It's that thing of like, in hindsight, I look at it and go, just does anyone see me? Right. And then to the point of being a total dick, Um, and then my other early first, I would say would be sugar and food. Because what I realized was when this noise in my head is telling me all these things like, you're just stupid. You're never going to achieve what your grandfather, father, brother have ever achieved, right? So what's the point, right? And the noise, I found that if I, ate, this is where I discovered that I'm most definitely an addict, right? So I go, well, I'll just have a cookie, right? But I've never had one of anything. So, but the other thing that I would do is I'd sneak into the kitchen and I would steal it and then scurry off somewhere, eat it, and then leave the wrappers lying around to be caught. Right? That's a thing I did once where they call this the negative love syndrome, where you create these situations that At least they see me, kind of thing. And so I realized that was a bit of a habit. But then what's interesting is that there was also a dynamic in our family, and I didn't realize this until obviously much later because I didn't know what it was, that the comparing that went on in our household, especially our mother, bless her, of like, and the mixed messages. I always think around the food one because, in our culture, food is a transactional thing, as is money, which is also something that became a transactional thing of I suppose in their opinion, that's their way of showing love, Um, I was not opposed to taking it, that's for sure, because it turns out I'm, as we'll find out later, selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and certainly terrified of everything. So I hated school. It sent me off to school, but the upside, because I used to get beaten up, I was a little on the, well, I think I was a little on the chubby side because the problem I have is I see pictures of that kid and he seems normal, but the messages around the house was you're fat, you've got to lose weight. By the way, eat this. I'm like, what? So it was that weird sort of, and then it was also the sort of, as I said, it was the sort of sign of closest thing to love. They say, here, eat this, because my mother would do it as well, so that was the thing we had in common. But then the guilt, da, 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 and it would come down on me. So it was all very confusing as a kid. So um, I have ridiculously bad body dysmorphia still to this day, because that's just the conditioning. And when you're an alcoholic, I feel we like to take something and we'll blow it into a huge, big thing. So anyway, off to boarding school, that was a nightmare. Uh, as I said, because I had convinced myself I was never going to be fill in the blank, it turns out schools don't like people that disrupt classes and they pull you out and you get beaten by the headmaster by the old bamboo cane thing. And it happens so often that the headmaster at one point goes, "This isn't working, is it?" I go, "No, not really." So he made me go break stones in his garden rather than, clear stones out of his garden getting beaten. Because to be fair, it didn't really bother me because you learn tricks when you're in boarding school. You wear three pairs of underwear and you put paper in between it. Because it's what do they say about us? We are, if anything, we are fantastically manipulative and we'll find a way around things. Um, actually, Jay, you're right. Could you take away the co-hosting thing because it does keep popping up? And I'm not used to dragging this stuff out, so bear with me. So school, boom. Now, what I did learn to survive in school, and this is again such a, in hindsight, the addict and alcoholic thing. Um, I learned from mum, of course, again, she was on that list a lot, of how to manipulate people using food and money. So I would take a big old thing called tuck box to school, and I would have loads of candy in it, and I would basically pay off the bullies. And then when that ran out, they'd beat me up again. But it was good for a bit. And the problem with sugar is I lived with the dealer because our family was in chocolate, so it was just everywhere. So it didn't really help when you got that message of like, don't eat that stuff. By the way, here's a fucking factory full of it. Um, but that's not why I'm an alcoholic. And I say that because I really do believe you know, because this will shock you. Well, it won't. No, don't really care. The two things I never did. Okay. No, I'm going to save that bit until later because it's good. So, I couldn't wait to get out of school. Let's just say I probably went to four or five different schools because it was the same story every time. To my parents, they're like, I don't think he should come back next year. I don't think he should come back next year. Could do better, has potential. I never did anything that was annoying. I never did anything bad per se. I never like set fire to the sort of science lab or something, which I should have. It was just that I was that painfully insecure, overly compensating, as we would refer to it now, bloody addict that sees the world in a whole different way um, to what was really going on because I suffer from this disease that gives me a false sense of the world. I strongly believe that I have a brain that is wired differently from most people. right? I said to somebody today, the thing about the 12 steps, people go, hey, you know, I made my bed today. It's like, you want a pat on the back. It's what normal people do. I think the 12 steps is great because we're 12 steps behind most people. So we need those to catch up with society because I look at it very differently when I was younger. Anyway, let's get out of school and let's get, so I grew up in central London, very social family. So my brother and sister were very social. So I was able to start going out at a very young age. Um, and it was interesting because it was more, I'm not really an English pub person. We were sort of more nightlife and sort of that sort of sceney thing. And I think, oh no, we'll go back a bit. So around about that time, one of the cool things about my mum, right, is because she's one of us. But she had a fantastic pill collection. So because that was her thing. And the women of her era, Mother's Little Helper and all that stuff, which was fantastic for us because we would bump into each other, my brother and sister, going through her Black Bombers, the Black Beauties, and the Temazepam, and so the uppers and the downers and the lefties and the righties. We'd just take all those. Because I thought, well, if I take the speed, maybe that'll curb the food and sugar and all that rubbish, right? Um, and that was also in those now I'm sort of early teens. The other thing that started happening a lot is I would start stealing um, from the family, Now remember, I was clear about this, and I'm not saying for other reason. We didn't want for anything in our family, right? We had staff, we had houses, we had all the bits. But this brain was like, I got to go steal that. And in those days, my dad had a billfold because you didn't have credit cards then, and I'd peel off a couple of notes off that, and because I need it, I need it. You see, this to me is where it first started becoming apparent in hindsight that this disease is not about alcohol. It says it very clearly in the early part of the book. Liquor is but a symptom, right? I needed to steal that stuff to get the buzz of getting away with it, right? I needed that to go buy things, right? I had to have stuff. But I'm an idiot because I'm an alcoholic, so we don't think. So I would steal this money. I would scurry off to the place to buy things from my bike. And I remember once this little idiot, I bought indicators for the back of my bike. Fucking indicators, right? Really need those. But as I said, I'm an idiot, which means I bring the bike home. My dad goes, "What are those?" I go, "Oh." He goes, "Where did you get the money for those?" I'm like, "Oh," because that's what we do. What's most important, and this becomes really apparent as it gets later in life, is like, I want what I want and I want it now. And I do not think about the consequences of what's going to happen on everything. This becomes worse. So when that starts as a little kid, in the way I manipulate people at school, the way that I, get in trouble. This is going to be a roller coaster. But I had no idea because that was just a Thursday. Um, so lots of things like that. Then I start getting into the sort of London nightlife. So this is the 80s. So I remember I went from those speed pills because then I'd be all wired and hey, I'm going out. So in those days, this went straight up and it was flat on the top. But I've got a curl here. So I'm sitting there with a hairdryer and the hairspray for hours just to get, and then it would kink and so it'd start again. The insanity started so young where it had to be perfect, but I've got a kink in the hair. So, okay, not normal, but that's what, speed and stuff did. Um, then we'd go out, and the interesting thing in hindsight, again, I was out all the time. We'd go to these fabulous, bar, restaurants and clubs and stuff. And whilst I'd be quite animated, in hindsight, I look at it that I was kind of the sort of the loneliest person in a crowd, For years, it just it didn't fix it. And I've gone to and been around some fantastic situations, right? I started career-wise, I left school at about 15 because that's what you can do that in England, and I went to start work. And but it turns out I'm fundamentally lazy, is what I thought, and I procrastinate, and I didn't really want to do it, and I didn't really have to do it because again, what came out of doing work, which will come later, is that if I can get away with somebody else doing something for me, I'll do it. Right? If I can manipulate a situation where I don't have to, and what that became apparent later in life, right? When I looked at my sort of not just career path, but projects I've done, and I've done some very cool shit, is I look at, see, if I don't do, this is the early days, if I don't really do that much, then I can't be accountable for it. So I can't fuck it up and I can't go. So there's this insanity going on in my head about, I really want to do this stuff. So you've heard this a million times. I was a great starter. I came up with great ideas and I had great gusto to start with. And then the fucking head kicks in. And I didn't know what that was back then. Remember, I'm still young. The head going, yeah, I don't know why, because the voice of my mother and my father and my brother. Da, da, da. I don't know why you're bothering doing that. You know, it's just not going to work out. You know, you're a failure. You know, no one's actually saying it to me except this voice in my head. So how do I stop this voice in my head? I got to start doing more of stuff. So then it went from the pills and stuff to speed to cocaine. Oh, yeah, discovered that. Turns out it wasn't addictive back then, allegedly. Um, and I would do lots of that. And um, it just progressed because back then it was great. And you again, you always hear it starts off fun, then it's fun with problems, then it's problems. I had to do it because I had to do it because it was one of the few things that kept the head quiet. And if you think I had problems taking one cookie, which I've never done, and I eat the whole package. When I discovered things like cocaine, that all bets were off. It was fantastic. It helped me lose weight, helped me be chatty, and I could be around that. And I was in an industry where I'm around beautiful women, and I'm rock and roll, and there's drugs, and you're getting paid for it. I'm like, oh, this is great, right? But like all good things, as this disease progresses, and again, I really do believe I have this disease. I've had it all my life. I have a genetic disposition. I have a brain thing that just makes me think differently. Which is why I want to kind of skirt through. How am I doing on time? I want to skirt through and really get to what happened and more importantly, what it's like now, what changed everything. Because I'm a huge advocate of this. And I'll tell you, okay, so I'm going to speed it up a bit because I want to take longer on the solution, right? It got bad. Surprise, right? It got bad. I started, I was doing a lot of cocaine. I'm a terrible drug dealer because I would do all my stuff. I'm one of those. I thought I'll be clever. I don't know, never worked. And then where it really started to go sideways, because I could tell you loads of fun stories about amazing parties in different parts of the world with fabulous rock stars and beautiful people, but that didn't fix it. It wasn't enough to stop that fucking noise in my head that was going on. You loser, you train wreck, you're never going to amount to anything, right? So, um, where it really started to change was I was at a friend's house, and my friend came home with this chap who had a little black briefcase, and he goes, "I'm gonna show you how to do something." And he opened up the case, and there was a blowtorch, some ammonia, a spoon, boom, and he showed us how to cook up cocaine, which back then was called freebase. Um, and again, if I'm upsetting any of you drinkers, sorry, because if you're having a problem, here's the thing for newcomers or whatever, change the word coke or drugs or whatever to alcohol to pick your tipple, whiskey. I couldn't stop when I started. I would say I'm just going to have one. I couldn't do it. I had to go until I ran out. When this chap showed us how to wash up cocaine and smoke freebase, I fell in love. I've never been in love with a person. I've never been in love. It's one of those weird English issues I've got. I'm sure the step work will help. But I fell in love with that and nothing else mattered. The progression was so fast that I ended up, at by this time I had a house up in place in Notting Hill in London, and the curtains. I was one of those cliches. The curtains were taped shut. They were in the trees. Uh, I was under surveillance. I think they were under the door, so I could hear them whispering. So I'd have to put the towel under the door because they're outside my front door, in the door inside the house. Um, my friend said one day we were at his house and we'd polished off in less than 48 hours we'd polished off an ounce of cocaine smoking it, and I was stuck to the ceiling. And he said, "Here, smoke some of this, will take the edge off." And I discovered this: you smoke heroin and you smoke crack, you could go nowhere fast. And it was that whole thing of like, and again, let's be clear on why this is happening, right? The voices in my head were starting to get louder and louder. The only thing that shut them up was oblivion, right? Some people call it a blackout. Some people call it, I drank too much. Uh, the weird thing about this, right? And I don't know if maybe this is totally unique and none of you have ever felt this stuff, but uh, of being different, of having this thing, of not being able to stop was the worst part. I have one situation. I was in London because we'll get to me moving here and all that sort of stuff. But I was in London and I'd been sober that time for 7 years. And I get to London because we're going to come back to getting sober and all that shit. And I arrive and I go to my friend's house and I go, call the guy. They go, what? You've been sober for? I said, call the guy. They go, you've been, call the guy. Now, I don't know about you, but when somebody has that look in their eye, you better find that thing for them because it's going to kick off, right? Whether it's a drink, a beer, a drug, or whatever. I then sequestered myself in the hotel room. I don't know how many days it was, but what I do know is I ended up having to call a friend of mine in LA in a panic, saying, I can't get out of the room. It's not letting me out the room. Because what do you mean? He says, I haven't left the room. He says, I've been non-stop. I tried to go to sleep. I put it in a drawer. I closed the drawer and it was shouting, come on, we're not done yet. And I was freaked out because I couldn't stop. I had to get out of bed. I had to pull it out. I had to do it. Right? That's not normal. Right? And the weird thing is, again, when I first got sober back in the 90s, um, I stopped doing the substances, but I remember waking up in the middle of the night going, I need Raisinets. What? I need Raisinets. I got up at 2 o'clock in the morning, got dressed, got in the car, drove down to 7-Eleven to get a packet of Raisinets. Okay. If you have any doubt that there's the addictive alcoholic gene in me, right? These are things that showed me, holy shit, I have no control. But we'll get to that. Anyway, jump back to the end of the 80s got really dark in London, really dark, like curled up on the floor, not bathed. Um, I've been fired from a bunch of jobs. See, the thing about the music, well, you can get away with it for a certain amount of time, but at a certain point, you become the guy they go, let's not have him come to this because he's going to do us. Because I was the guy that would do your stuff. You'd go, so where's it gone? I go, I'll help you look for it. Right? I'm a despicable character back then. Um, thank you. Okay, so I know it's a bit all over the place. I hope there's something in here, but so let's get to the interesting stuff. So it all within this thing, I'll just chuck in a few of the tidbits, then we'll get to the good stuff. Uh, my parents separated, but my father decided what a good idea we should send him to school in America and get his SATs, and then he could go to university because I was becoming a train wreck in London, out every night. And so I went to high school in Boston. My brother had gone to BU, so I'm here in Boston. I've got all his friends and connects and stuff. So I made it through a year that I took my SETs. I couldn't tell you what I got because I don't remember much of the year. Um, but it turns out he used to deal a lot of drugs in Boston, and so I had all his connects. So it turns out high schools in America don't appreciate my extracurricular marketing and distribution skills. So they carted me off on a plane, sent me back to England, sharpish. Um, I've lived in New York, I've lived in Paris, I've done this, but it turns out every time I go somewhere, there I am. Now, in 1989, I'm sitting curled up in my house, probably kicking drugs. I've just finished a tour or something, and that's a slump and it's depressing. My friend goes, "Hey, I'm getting married. Come to LA for the week." I was like, "Yes, that's it," because London's the problem. You see, it's the weather. It's the people in London. If they would just get off my back, everything would be all right. Um, so I jump on a plane and I fly to LA for my friend's wedding. But you see, I didn't know if you guys had the right sort of ammonia for what I need. I knew you had good cocaine because but I didn't know if you had that. So I take a little vial and I put English ammonia in it. I put it in my case. And see, I don't think normal people do that. That I need what I need because when I need it, I'm going to need it. So the thought of customs, the thought of any of that stuff is irrelevant. Because when I got kicked out of, let's just go back to that. When I got kicked out of high school, I just had a drop from the deal. I stuffed everything in my suitcase, not thinking, stuffed it in my suitcase, and they carted me off there. That was the most harrowing airline flight I've ever had because I had an ounce of cocaine in the fucking hold and I didn't even think. Granted, they didn't catch me and it was a brilliant week, although my father refused to see me for a week. But enough of that. Get to LA, 1989, boom, still fucked. It turns out I get to the airport and I thought it was London, but at the airport, there's a sign, a gremlin holding a sign saying, "Welcome to LA, I'm here, bitch." I was like, ah, fuck. Because no matter where you go, there you are. And so it kicked off again. I spent the first year just partying. I knew a lot of people here. It was very, very different town in the 90s, and it was just crazy. But it got very dark again. It took me back to that place. Anyway, let's go flying through that. So because this is a progressive disease, wherever I was back then, it got worse. So I get to LA, and I was only meant to be here for that week. So I didn't get the memo. I've been here 34 years because, just the sun was out. It was fabulous. So I end up getting a job with a guy I used to work with in England, and it was great. It was very sort of very cool, but I could not stop using. So at the studio, I had a little box with Velcro with my stuff in it, hidden behind the tape room, and I'd in and out, until the day I was out of the room and then my dealer arrived and they caught me and they fired me. That was in 1990. September. I called my sister. I said I fucked up again, which was a common thread. Now, my sister actually is the one who turned me on to drugs many, many years ago. So I would call her. So anyway, I go, okay, I can't do this anymore. So what are you going to do? I said, I think I need to get sober. This is AA thing here. So I went to my first meeting it was at Fairfax and Fountain, and I think it was a Friday night. Funny thing about one's first meetings, I remember exactly who was speaking. I remember the host, Ernesto, being the secretary, being so bubbly and upbeat, and everyone was so upbeat and stuff, and I was just angry. And I bumped into other newcomers who I knew from Clubland, and we sort of banded together, and we'd go off to coffee after meetings and being angry and stuff. But then after a bit, it softened up. I'd stopped using the drugs. Um, Again, what's super weird, and people that know have ever done certain drugs, is I've never smoked cigarettes and I've never drank alcohol. But let me tell you clearly, I'm an alcoholic. I go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't go to NA because I go to the mothership. I go to the source of that big book that has saved lives. And for me, that works. I don't want to be, you know, although I didn't, to be honest, at the beginning. So I went 9 years without doing any substances. Well, not doing those substances. But the thing about this disease is it's cunning and baffling and it's whack-a-mole. So what I didn't realize because I didn't do the step work, right? I had a couple of sponsors in name, so I couldn't say, "Have you got a sponsor?" Yeah, that dude. But I never did the steps. Now, I didn't use, but I started the sugar and the food started kicking off. The spending habits, the I mean, the behavior, the manipulative behavior, and the voices in my head were just as loud. So I had to do all these other things, but I kept convincing myself, well, I'm not doing that one, right? Let me tell you, you, this disease is so weird that it could be one glass of sherry. That could be your thing. You got to have it at 5 o'clock every day. You got to have that one glass of sherry. You take that away from an alcoholic, they will rip your throat out. So it's not about the amount of stuff you did. It's not about, it's what goes on here. What is it they say? You come here for your drinking, you stay for the thinking. Because it really became apparent to me that later on, that I've got to do something about this. So I'm one of those people that thought, well, all I got to do is stop the substances. In hindsight, I should have just kept using because the misery and the frustration was horrendous. And then at the end of 9 years, I had some dental surgery and they gave me some pain meds and I went off the rails for a week and then came back in. Then got 7 years and at the end of 7 years is when I ended up in London going, call the guy. Then I had my friend who I called because I was trapped in the room. I had to say to him, I don't know what to do. He says, well, when are you leaving? I said, 3 days. He said, well, leave tomorrow. I go, I hear you saying something, but I don't know what you mean because the disease had me. So he said, well, pick up the other phone and let's call the airline. And I had to have him talk me through how to ask them to change the ticket because it had me. I don't know if anyone else has ever had that where you have that moment where you go, oh fuck, I'm really in trouble here. But that wasn't enough. So I came home, I kicked, boom. So let's just cut to I had a whole bunch of surgeries, all that sort of shit. So I was back on the pain meds, and then I'm back on all the stuff. I was telling somebody this morning in a meeting that I had to go. I went into a detox facility because I was taking a few pills to stop the pain from a surgery, right? That's what I convinced myself. And I think I remember I took a 5 year cake while I was in the rehab. That's how delusional this thing is. If you've ever remember, I don't have a problem with this, right? Wait until you get into the step work to realize what's going on. Because what happened to me was it got really bad again. It got right back to where it was 30 years ago, curled up on the floor. I couldn't see out of the windows of my house here. The house was in foreclosure. I basically spent all my money. When they talk about hitting that bottom of absolute demoralization, that's what had to happen for me. Because for the last 20 odd years before that, the consequences weren't so bad. I was financially secure, I had all that sort of stuff. And in my head, that's what equated to, well, I'm not as bad as that person on the street. Let me tell you, it took for me, the blessing for me was I burnt my life down. And I actually understood what you talked about when you said absolute demoralization, absolute misery. I woke up that morning, November 26th. I went, I can't do this anymore. And I called up my friend Sasha, who lives around the corner. He's got about 30 something years. We grew up together. And I said two things to him that I'd never said before. The first was, I don't know what to do. Now, I didn't go into much detail about, I'm almost professionally, I'm a problem solver, I'm a hustler, I'm a cheat, I'm a liar, I'm a thief, I'll steal from you, all that stuff, right? And I'd run out of angles. Now, for an alcoholic to go, I don't know what to do. The second thing I says, and I'll do anything. I finally got to that point. I'd never been at that point. So we called Chris Davis, who became my sponsor. He came up and Chris has got a very delicate touch. So he goes, get a fucking notepad and a pen and start writing. So, because I needed that at that point, right? So he goes, okay, step one, you're powerless over alcohol, drugs, people, sugar, boom, everything. And your life is unmanageable. I go, what do you mean? It's like, if you're new and you want to question whether you're powerless, well, the powerless thing is try just doing one and putting it down. I couldn't do that. And it tore my life up. So I wrote down these examples of where I was powerless over this stuff, where examples where my intention was to do this and I ended up there. And that wasn't the plan. And I fucked over a lot of people. I didn't show up to things because I couldn't help it, you know, because if I had that first one, time disappears, right? So, and then my life was unmanageable. Well, if you're ever in doubt when you're brand new, if your life is unmanageable, how's your living situation? How's your finances? How's your dating life? What's your credit score like? Mine were in the toilet at that point. Um, and I got to write out these examples. So I saw clearly in black and white, holy shit, I've tried everything. Look, I've tried everything. But it turns out my way doesn't work. And so we really drilled into step one because step one really is the one step we have to get perfect. Where I to myself admitted I was an alcoholic. drug addict, whatever you want to call it, right? And I use the word alcoholic, and I live by the 12 steps and the big book of alcoholics. So, I'll say I'm an alcoholic, and I'm powerless over any of that stuff. Because trust me, I know if I was drinking, I would be exactly in the same situation, if not dead. A lot of situations appeared in my first step of highly dangerous, close to death situations that I completely kind of wiped away because this is a disease of forgetfulness. The disease doesn't want me to remember the shitty situations I've been. It'll remember the fun parties. Oh yeah. But it doesn't let me remember the pain and the depression and the misery that was caused by me in situations. So clearly understood that, okay, I get it. I'm really powerless over this, and I can clearly see my life is unmanageable every time I take a substance, right? What do I do? So you said, well, maybe came to believe in a power greater than yourself that could restore me to, what's that word? Sanity? Because step one clearly showed how insane I was, right? The things I was doing, the places I was putting myself in. A nice boy from Kensington in some horrendous crack dens around the world, watching people getting stabbed and not caring because I needed what I needed. I needed my medicine, right? So you said, wait, a higher power could restore me to sanity? What is this thing? Because I'm a Jew that went to a Christian school that didn't understand any of that. I mean, I'm Jewish. I don't, because I love bacon. I'm sure if they knew how good it was back then, it would, but I didn't have a concept because I don't believe in that bloke with the beard and the thunderbolts, and I don't believe that there should be, for me, this damnation and thing because I had enough of that at boarding school. I had enough of that in my family life, the abuse and the if you do something wrong, you're going to get really punished for it. That doesn't make sense to me. So they said, brilliant. We don't care. If you've got a problem with the word God, it's not the God we're talking about. I was like, ooh, okay. And he even says it in the book. They go, look, he goes, I don't believe in God. He goes, great. You don't have to. What you have to believe in is a concept of a power greater than you. I was like, all right, that I can work with, right? So, this is what's amazing about this program. Here you go, carte blanche. What do you want your higher power to be? What are the attributes? And for me, it's got to be non-judgmental. It's got to be protective. It's got to keep me safe, but it's also got to um, be non-judgmental, and it's got to help me in situations when I talk to it. I was like, oh, I could work with that. Because then you said, oh, that's good. You said, great. Third step, let's hand your will and your life over to the care of that God, right?
10 minutes.
Thank you. So, for me, that was an interesting one because as it was explained to me, my will is my thinking and my life is my action. And what's very, very clear, again, from step one, is that my best thinking got me here. My best thinking of, you know what I need to do? I know that last night I thought I was going to die. And I know I took the shower of shame this morning, which is standing in the shower going, I said I wasn't going to do that again. I can't believe I'm going to do that again. I'm not going to do it today. I'm not going to do it today. Fuck it. It's 2 o'clock. This one will be different though. I'm going to be different today. And it's never different. I wake up in different places, but it just that shower of shame became a regular thing. And he wrote up. So it said, okay, if your first thought is I'm going to take that drink, the first drink, right? Because I need to stop the noise. What if I take that higher power I've just discovered and I picture it as a big old filter, right? A little air conditioning filter in between my first thought and my first action. And that when it goes through that filter, it goes, well, rather than doing that, why don't we like pick up the phone? Why don't we stand up and walk out the room? Why don't we go and do something different? Anything different, which becomes later on that becomes the intuitive thought. Oh, Owen and Sharon, look at you little love bugs. Um, so I aspire to that, by the way. That's brilliant. So step three, having that higher power in between that first thought and first action gave me the most important thing I think that I get out of the program, which is hope. There is hope that if I do something different, there might be a different course of action. We were talking today about the 12 principles. I wanted to be super clever and have it in front of me, but I don't have it in front of me, but you know what I mean. But honesty and hope was a massive one, right? So understanding that I now had this higher power that's got my back, I've talked to it, it's told me what it's doing. I'm going to lean into the fourth step. Woo! The concept of I'm gonna write out here's a fearless and thorough inventory, moral inventory. Well, for years that terrified me, right? Because as I've told you, I've been in the program for a long time. I've still got my first big book on my bookshelf there from 30 something years ago, unopened, dust cover still on it, right? Because I've never touched that, so I had no concept of this stuff. But this time, okay, so let's lean into this. Okay. The first step, um, sorry, okay, thanks, Jay. Um, the concept of being rigorously honest. So, but what a brilliant first part of it. Write down a list of names of all those people that have wronged you. Ho, ho! Well, early lists were nothing. This one was like, right, everyone's fucking going down. And everyone went down. People, places, cultures, institutions, those people, it's their fault. Those fucking people, IRS, people I didn't even know were on my list. Fuck those guys, right? Um, and so here I've got this ridiculous list of people. My first one, an old sponsor said you had 11 names on an early one. I had 13 pages of legal pad on this one, right? No one was spared. So then he says, go down and put the cause. Oh, yeah, mother, she's nuts, and dad absent. Da, da, da. So I put things, because I don't believe you put a soliloquy on each one. It's just put something in there that gives you the resonance that you go, oh, okay, yeah, oh. Because otherwise, if you were to write, I said to somebody, if you were to write everything mum had done in 50 odd years, we'd still be doing that first line of the first step. It's just to get the feeling of like, yes. Because then what was kind of cool is they go, all right, so we now understand the cause. Yeah. Brr. What did it affect? Oh, wait, I hadn't thought about this one. Did it affect your self-esteem, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations? Oh, shit. Yeah. So mark those, write those down in that column. And then what was explained to me is imagine each one of those is a stone column and they fall on each other and their little chip comes off. So at the bottom of ambition and the bottom of self-esteem and bottom is this pile of rock building up. So by the time I got through 13 pages of legal pad, I realized I'm dragging around this massive sack of stone chips because I got talk about a chip on the shoulder. This was a massive, like, mountain of misery and lack of self-esteem and all that sort of shit. And I was like, oh, now what do I do with that then? They go, okay, the next column. Now this one is a really interesting one. For me the slither in the fourth step after the what it affected and before we get into my part is a really important part. It says, let's go back to the list. Let's look at these people and ask ourselves this question. Could they be as spiritually sick as I was? Okay. Good. Okay, I'm almost done. See, I knew I should have done more of this stuff. Um, could they have been as spiritually sick as I was? Oh, because I don't know about you, but I've never really given a shit about anyone else's feelings, thoughts, or whatever, unless I needed them to get what I needed to get, right? So I get to stop, look back at the list, and go, "Oh shit! I never thought about what my mother might have gone through when I was on a 5-day bender, right? Whether I would come home or not. I never thought about what a teacher might have gone through to do what they did, what the bullies must have gone through at their." So for me, it was a very powerful moment of like, "Oh wait, it's not all about me." Because then when I lent into the fourth column, which is, have I ever been selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid? And I write down examples of this for every one of those people. Holy shit, what a dick, right? It suddenly became really apparent that the problem wasn't you lot. The problem was this guy. I wouldn't hang out with this guy. Oh my God, what a tool. Talk about stepping on the toes of others and they retaliate. Talk about, I mean, again, this book written 85 years ago talks about me, wanting to be the actor, the script writer, the scene. It's all about me, me, me. Do as I say, not as I do. And if you just do what I say, everything will be perfect, right? So, leaning into that fourth part of the step was the column was amazing because I was like, oh shit. Then you ask about my fear inventory. It turns out I'm terrified of everything. And then my sex inventory, I thought, oh, you want to know about all my conquests? Nope. Have you ever conjured up, jealousy, betrayal, all that stuff? Yeah, because I'm going to cut you before you cut me, because I know you're going to leave me. So I'm going to destroy you before that so that I feel better. And then I'm going to feel like shit because that's the insanity of this disease. So I get to then, having done the inventories, I get to sit with my sponsor and we go through everything. Everything. I told him everything. Um, Stuff that I thought I'd never tell anyone about, things that happened at school, all that sort of malarkey. Um, and a funny thing happened as we're halfway through, and I was doing it with another guy because we did up my house. Um, we're kind of giggling through some of these things that on the surface might be like horrendous and whatever, thinking that no one else has done this. And they're like, yeah, we did that. And we did it plus that. It's like, oh. But then my sponsor's writing stuff down as I'm talking, because then we get to the, fuck, running out of time because we're getting to the good stuff. Six and seven. Six and seven to me are vital. Six, I call it the dirty diaper of AM, sitting in this shit, and because I know it. I know these horrendous things of like entitlement, ego, low self-esteem, feel like a piece of shit. I'm a fraud, but I'm better than you, and all this stuff going on in my head. That's what's been going on in my head for the last 50 years. It's crazy, right? So I go, well, how do I get out of this? He said, seventh step is the shower. Seventh step says, let's ask for these character defects to be removed so that I can better be of service or whatever it is. So I look at, self, whatever it is, low self-esteem, feeling confident. All these things I got to look at. The column was I am, piece of shit on this stuff here. My higher power is these things. If I'm mean, I want to be nice. If I'm a thief, I want to be honest. You know what I mean? All this sort of stuff that suddenly became really apparent at six and seven. My favorite, hands down, two steps, Drop the Rock was great, but it's the shortest part of the book, but it's every day. It doesn't stop. So if you're new and you think this is a one and done, sorry, it's a daily reprieve. We get to, contingent on our spiritual practice, right? I have to do this shit every day. Now, rolling into eighth step, well, I've got that list, but there's some people I'm not going to make amends to, and some maybe, and these ones, yeah. I've been all over the place. I flew back to England. I sat with my brother who I hadn't spoken to for over 6 years at the time. And I get to sit there and I go, listen, I've done some really awful things to you that you didn't deserve. And for that, I'm truly sorry. That guy's no longer here. Is there anything I've forgotten? Careful with that one because I got 45 minutes of, I don't know why you were talking to me. We're not friends. Da, 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 da. Right. I go, you're absolutely right. For that, I'm sorry. I'm not that guy today. Because I'm not that guy today. What the steps have done for me has changed me fundamentally from the idiot that I was, right? Um, he and I now speak almost every day. It's bizarre, right? So the ninth step promises, I swear to God, come true. Each one of them. I'm going through a horrendous financial situation at the moment, right? But I'm working through it. But you know what? That fear of people and economic insecurity has left me. Because what I've been taught in this program is you suit up, we keep moving forward. I'm on the phone, I'm busy, and shit happens. Not in Nico's time, but I got a higher power that I promise has promised me that it's going to look after me. It's going to do it, but it's going to do it in its time. He's probably busy at the moment solving the world peace at the moment, but it's going to happen. And I really believe that because it's been proven over and over again. So, yep, yep. So, 10th step, I try to do, we could go into the nights, we could do a whole thing on the steps, but 10th step I do every day, just see, do I need to clean it up? 11th step for me is incredibly important every morning. I do 86 to 88 because it's a set of instructions of how I can reset my day to, you know, ask. And the most important one is divorce me from self-pity, dishonesty, and self-seeking. I usually wake up with one of those going on. And by asking my higher power to remove it, like I did in 6 and 7, I'm left with confidence, honesty, and service, right? The 11th step is vital on that. The 86 to 88 is such an incredible cliff note to be able to mash through this on a daily basis, right? Um, and then the 12th step, and I could talk about 86 all day long because I broke it down into such detail, like the Serenity prayer. It's such an important prayer. And the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, I get to pass it on and go help other people. I have sponsees. My life is ridiculously good. Is it where I'd like it to be? You know what I thought? No, fuck no. But the lights are on. You're here. I do a lot of meetings. I go to a lot of Zoom meetings. I'm service a lot. I've got commitments everywhere. I love this program because it's changed my life so fundamentally that I will talk steps to anybody for as long as they want. If anyone's struggling, you call me. I fucking love this stuff. Jay, thank you. It was all over the shop. I usually don't like talking about that middle part because I want to get to the steps, and I never have enough time to talk about them because I could go on all day about them. So thank you so much for having me. I hope there was something there, a bit of a waffle, but my first one, so for 50 minutes. Yeesh.
Yay. Thank you so much.